Iran's grand strategy covers the history of the nation from its revolution in the 70s up until 2025. This covers all the international and domestic dealings, from the hostage negotiations to the Iran-Iraq war to the sanctions that take place to this day. Following the Iran-Iraq war, the Arab world would be less favorable toward Iran. Iran was fearful and mindful of the fact that they didn't want to become like Iraq. They feared that if they succumbed to the United States negotiations, that they would have the same fate of Iraq. The United States dealing with Libya later on confirmed Iran's fears. The sanctions did put significant stress on Iran, and they were barely getting by with the sanctions. And the long feared sanctions imposed on other nations continued to make them nervous, especially when it came to their dealings with Trump later on. When Trump changed sanctions and strategies with Iran, they became more resistant and defiant to the United States diplomacy. For a time, this worked domestically and somewhat internationally. However, this reversed as time went on, and people began to become less favorable of Iran again, especially with their morality laws, the morality police, and the morality enforcement. It was like throwing a match onto a flammable object when they began to enforce the morality laws in the 2020s, sparking mass protests. Where in 2009, there were specific protests for political grievances. In 2018, there was protests for economic hardships. But in the 2020s, there was a new nationwide scale of protests going on due to individual rights and freedoms violations. Iran has always seen itself as self-reliant. This goes back even to the 80s when they were beginning to develop relationships with the USSR through Gorbachev. Into the 90s, Iran was even back then still blaming things on Israel. Anytime that souring relationships between Iran and the United States took place, they would blame Israel. Although they didn't trust the United States to begin with, even in the 90s, Iran was worried Israel was manipulating the United States in order to weaken Iran on an international level. As time went on, Iran felt more and more assured that the United States did not want to be friendly due to continued miscommunications and blunders. It's no surprise things have become what they are when Iran's leaders for years have described their view of the United States as the United States being like a dog that if you leave it alone will lunge at you, but if you lunge at it, it will recoil and back away. Pick up this book if you'd like to learn more about the domestic and international relationships of Iran over the last 50 years.